χαλασμός κόσμος. Τι έπιες ρε και κάνω και εσύ.
Sudden stratospheric warming happens high up in the atmosphere, but can affect weather at the surface and is often linked to periods of particularly cold weather. For the UK, a sudden stratospheric warming can lead to a cold snap and increases the risk of wintry weather. A sudden stratospheric warming begins 50 kilometres above the surface in the very high altitude jet stream, where a wavy-like disturbance begins to disrupt the jet stream. As the wave grows, it reaches a point where it turns over and breaks, just like a wave hitting a beach. At this point, the wave and its disruption to the jet stream push the jet stream in the opposite sense. So it's pushing the air against the flow of the jet stream, and it weakens the jet stream. And actually, the whole thing reverses, so you now have flow from the east to the west. At this point, the air starts to fall into the Arctic. And because it's all falling into the Arctic and getting squashed, it starts to warm. So there's no heating going on as such, but you are compressing the air and therefore warming it, and the temperature can rise by as much as 50 degrees in just a few days. So once you've got winds from the east at high altitude, then the next bunch of waves that come up from the lower atmosphere cannot propagate into that part of the atmosphere anymore. It turns out that waves can only propagate when the winds are from the west. So they see this easterly region at high altitude, and now they break lower down than where they did originally. And again, they push the air from the east, and the whole thing moves downwards a little bit. And then the next bunch of waves comes up. They break on the bottom side of this easterly wind, and that brings it down even further, and so on, until the whole thing shifts down to where the weather is occurring in the lower atmosphere. So as the easterlies burrow their way down through the atmosphere, they eventually reach the top of the weather systems in the Atlantic. At this point, they kind of tickle the top of the weather systems and they weaken them, and they shift the jet stream further south. This allows air in from the east into northern Europe and the UK, and greatly increases the risk of a cold snap and perhaps even snow.
There's a good chance it could turn quite a bit colder later next week. And if the cold spell arrives, well, it may well stick around for quite some time. There are signs it could last into March. For the reasons behind this cold spell of weather, we have to look high up into the atmosphere. In fact, into the stratosphere, 30 kilometers above the surface over the North Pole. Now, this graph shows how the temperature here has changed, and changed quite dramatically. There's been a sudden jump in the temperature by around 50 degrees in a short space of time. This is sudden stratospheric warming, and it's important because it's a key indicator that things in the stratosphere have changed. It actually indicates that the winds may well have changed direction, and that's what's happened. Now, this is high up in the atmosphere, 30 kilometers above the surface, but after a while, that change in wind direction filters down through the stratosphere and can impact on the jet stream. It can weaken the jet stream. Now, the jet stream drives low pressure systems close to the United Kingdom. But a weaker jet means there's a greater chance of seeing high pressure dominating close to the UK. And that's what the signals are for, forming from the computers as we go through the latter part of next week. Some uncertainty about the exact position of the high, but if it's in such a position that the easterly winds get set up, then at the moment across Siberia, of course, the air is very cold. So if we get easterly winds, this cold air may well get drawn across the UK, and as I said at the start, it could stick around for quite some time. Now, it's not definite that this is going to happen, but as I say, there's a reasonably strong signal that it might. So it does look as if we could get colder. Next question, are we going to see much snow? Well, of course, for snow, you need it to be cold, but you also do need that extra ingredient, moisture. Because it looks as if it could get quite cold, though, almost anything falling out of the sky could be snow. So it does have to be said, there's a strong likelihood that if we get the cold spell, some places will see heavy snowfall. But snow, well, you do need those two ingredients, and a subtle change in wind direction makes all the difference about where we see the moisture and the exact location of any snowfall. So it's too early to say exactly where and when we'll see any snow, but it's something we'll be keeping a very close eye on. So stay up to date with the forecast. Any warnings will appear on the Met Office website. Keep up to date through our app or, of course, across social media.